Hello, these are your parts of an experiment notes, part 1. In these notes, you will go through the process of what a scientist thinks about and observes and questions to come up with the experimental process. It should be a review for you, but it is a good idea to refresh your memory because these skills are not easy to obtain. You have to practice them. So in order to practice them, you have to know them really well. So let's begin. Write in as I write in. Whatever I write, you write. If I highlight, you highlight. If there's other things that you would like to write in, you write in. If you want to highlight other things that are important to you, then highlight them. They are your notes, but you do at least have to do what I do. Let's begin. First thing, scientists will use process skills. Write that in. Process skills to find answers to questions. There are many process skills that a scientist uses, starting with observations, but also measurement and knowing safety, knowing how the lab equipment works. So that's what this little review is here, is talking about safety, emergency, and what equipment is most important, and different equipment in the room to use, and always use caution. But now right here, also the tools of the scientists, just a few particular science tools that scientists use often in their experiments. And now we're going to talk about your data collection. How do you get that data collection? Well, you're going to make observations. And I know that you've heard of them before, but let's have notes about them. Okay, so scientists are first going to make observations, lots of observations, with measurements, but also using their 5 senses. So let's talk about the first one. These are our QU words, and the first one is qualitative, and I'm going to spell it, but it's also up here in this chart, in the green bubble. Qualitative, Qualitative, qualitative. So qualitative means using your senses to take in your observations. Qualitative is using your senses. So where that arrow is, I'm going to write a little side note, and this is qualitative would be qualities. And so you're going to describe, write this in, describe with words. So basically you're using adjectives, you're using colors, you're using scents and smells, you're using what you see with your eyes, sometimes what you taste, what it tastes like, but a lot of times it's with our eyes, sometimes it's with our ears, but a combination of all of them possibly. The next type of observation a scientist would make would be a quantitative observation. And again, I'll spell it, but it's right here in the right green bubble up above, quantitative. Quantitative, quantitative. Quantitative is when a scientist is going to use amounts. So it could be a certain number that they are collecting, or they could be taking measurements. Write that in, measurements. So this is when you would find a number. That would be your quantitative. It's a quantity, an amount. So where that arrow is from quantitative, I'm going to say we're going to describe with numbers. Describe with numbers, a quantity. Scientists will also begin their experiment with a well-defined question. We can't just say it's any question because there's some certain guidelines and criteria that we have to follow as a scientist to start an experiment. So we have to have a well-defined question. So let's define what a well-defined question is. It is a clearly stated, Here's the key word. Write it in. Testable. A clearly stated testable question which includes an independent and dependent variable. I'm going to underline those words because we are going to talk about those words. And I'm going to use the highlighter. Yes, let's do that. So it's a testable question which includes an independent and dependent variable. In order to write it and pick out a well-defined testable question, you have to be able to tell me what is the independent, what's the dependent variable, so we need to make sure we know what those are. Let's write an example of a clearly stated testable question, and one that I came up with is what effect, so write this in please, this is our example. What effect does pH of water have on radish seed growth? Radish seed growth. I'll let you write that in. What effect does pH of water have on radish seed growth? So we're going to use that as a well-defined question, but we're going to pick apart the independent and dependent variable, but we do need to define what independent and dependent variable are first. So the first one is the independent, I-N-D-E-P-E-N-D-E-N-T, independent variable. It is what you are testing. So you have to find out what exactly are you testing. So if our question is, what effect does pH of water have on radish seed growth? Are we testing the temperature? Does it say anything about temperature? No. We are testing the effect of what? And you can say it out loud. If I ask questions and notes, I do want you to respond out loud. So we are testing the pH of water. Okay, so that's what we're going to identify as our independent variable. It's what we're testing. Next bullet right here. It's the one thing you change in the experiment to test. The one thing you change in the experiment to test. So our independent variable, what would we be testing? We're changing the pH of the water. I'm going to write that in parentheses. We're changing the pH of the water to test different pH waters to see if it has a better effect on radish seed growth. So independent variable, always go back to your question to see exactly what are you testing. Next type of variable is our dependent. N-D-E-P-E-N-D-E-N-T. Dependent. The dependent variable is what you are measuring in your experiment. Measuring. So if we go back up to our well-defined question, we said the pH of the water is what we're testing. It says, what does the effect of the pH of water have on radish seed growth? So what are we going to measure? We're going to measure the plant growth, or you could say radish seed growth. The radish seeds are the plant. So I just wrote that in parentheses underneath. So I'm going to go back up and highlight. Let's make the independent variable We'll make it a pink highlight. So independent variable. Okay, and so identifying it in our question, the pH of water is our independent. And then yellow highlight, we're going to make the dependent. And that's going to be up here in the sentence. That's our yellow, the radish seed growth, because that's something we can measure. That's our dependent variable. All right, so continuing on, I put this slide in here so you guys could have another set of information about well-defined questions. It's clearly stated, accurately and precisely described. It's testable, and the answer will be objective based on your observations and facts. By testable, it means an experiment will be performed in which data can be collected to show the results. So just because it's a question doesn't mean it's testable and you can get results from it. It has to meet that criteria. And that it will include an independent and a dependent variable. So here's another way to look at independent, dependent variable. The cause is the independent variable, and the effect, the outcome, is the dependent variable. I remember as a student myself, it was very difficult for me to get that straight. What is the independent, dependent? So I like to provide it to you in a multiple set of ways. So if that helps you better to understand independent, dependent right here, then by all means, make sure you highlight that. Okay, so we have some examples. Let's do the first two together to see if they involve a well-defined question, meet the criteria. So, question number 1, how do excessively high amounts of plastics in the ocean negatively affect the environment? Okay, it has a lot of science words and things that could happen, but it doesn't mean that it's a testable question. So, let's see, does it have an independent variable? Does it have something to test? How do excessively high amounts of plastics in the ocean negatively affect the environment? So, yeah, it does. It has like where you could test the amount of plastic in the ocean and then the effects of the environment. Reducing plastics, do you see more growth in the ocean life, more life? So yes, that would be something to test. Now, we couldn't necessarily do that in a classroom, but it'd be something that people that live in the ocean or take care of oceans or around oceans could. So yes, that would be a testable question. Question 2, what is the function of spines on cacti? So, function is something we talk about in science class. Is it a testable question? Can you test it? Is there a cause and effect? There actually is not. It is not a testable question due to the fact it's just asking you, what are the functions? Nothing you can test. Just tell me straight up what are the functions of the spines on cacti. Okay, so you're going to decide with your table the rest of these questions if they're considered a well-defined question according to the guidelines up above. Just put a check if they are a well-defined question and an X if they are not. All right, put these in your notes section of your Notability. Thank you. Bye.